Tonight on an LSU edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show.
Is it a realistic path? Sure, that's a realistic path.
To me, it's about how well Nussmeier can elevate an offensive line that's mediocre. And again, I think he can. Will he? We'll see.
That defense is good enough to get LSU into the play.
The LSU Tigers are going to win by 4 touchdowns up against Vanderbilt. Mine was easy. I literally came in with that supposed to be my last call, and then you made a reference to 4 touchdowns. I was like, oh gosh, that's exactly what I was going to say. Welcome into another Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, this time an LSU edition with the little Saints of Moosh Boosh over on the side. We appreciate you very much for being here with us. I am Ross Jackson. That is the one, the only, the legend, the myth himself, Doug Mouton. And we appreciate you very much for being here. Of course, the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show is a collaboration between WWL TV and the Locked On Podcast Network. And we appreciate you very much for joining us. We're going to dive into a lot of different things here, LSU, but a little bit of Saints to kick us off.
Yeah, and look, we got Ricardo LeCompte standing by. We're going to bring in Matt Moscona, one of the great voices of LSU coverage anywhere. Super curious about Matt's takes on several subjects. I want to dive into NIL and the college football playoff. So many things I want to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about Saints. We're trying to remember what you call the moosh boosh. I said, what is it, schmorge borscht? What do you call that thing? Anyway, first time somebody gave me that, I was like, wait, what?
Oh, what now?
It's a what?
It's on a...
Anyway, all right, look, a lot of people talking about Spencer Rattler right now. He has been pretty good. His overall numbers are okay, a little bit below the NFL average right now, 22nd in passer rating. We all think he's sort of extended his runway. How long that is, we don't know. Your opinion of how Spencer Rattler played, because one of my big takeaways was that he got no help, meaning from Chris Olave and the fumble from Juwan Johnson when you had. He got no help and still had a pretty good day.
20 of 26, 227 passing yards up against the New England Patriots. I think that what we've learned about Spencer Rattler is that he can indeed be, and I would even go so far as to say, probably is a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now that sounds like that's not a compliment. It is a compliment. To be able to play in the NFL at all is an accomplishment that 1% of people will ever experience. Being a starting quarterback in the NFL is a whole different thing. I think now the conversation becomes, can he be the person that leads this team to wins? And eventually then he embarks upon the conversation of being a franchise quarterback, but one step at a time.
Yeah, and look, I did a graphic at the beginning of the football season that of the 14 teams that made the playoffs last year, 13 of the 14 had a quarterback in the top half of the NFL. Quarterback play is directly linked to your ability to get to the playoffs. And the one quarterback that wasn't was C.J. Stroud, who lost in the first round and played in the worst division in the NFL. It's hard to win. It's hard to win big in the NFL, meaning advancing in the playoffs without an elite quarterback. Can he be an elite quarterback?
Bingo.
But look, I think he's been better than any of us thought he would be.
Yeah, I got to completely agree with that. And I think he's done a very good job of keeping Tyler Shuck at bay.
Yes, and he has absolutely done that. All right, we want to show you what's on the menu tonight because it's a lot of good stuff. I wish it was that stuff, not quite that good, but it's good stuff on the menu tonight on this Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. The large plates, meaning the big subjects. Brian Kelly, the job he's done now. Look, James Franklin and eating a $50 million buyout at Penn State. What does that mean to a $50 million buyouts are now on the table. And that's what Brian Kelly has. That's one of the topics coming up for Matt. And Garrett Nussmeier, LSU was better because he got healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you why else LSU got better with the small plates here. They got their run game going, which is a big need for this team. It should help to open up the rest of the offense. We'll dive into that with Matt. And of course, big opponent on the way, or rather, big game on the way for them as they go up against probably one of my favorite college quarterbacks.
He is fun. He is fun.
I really, really like him. So they're heading over to be taking on Vanderbilt, who actually, surprisingly, at least surprisingly to me.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
We'll get to it? Okay,
that's still ahead. All right, first
but Diego Bobby, awesome.
Dinner guest is, it's, as we said, Matt and Ricardo, who are awesome. And then last call, we are dipping back into our Ernest Hemingway love.
That's right.
For
the Hemingway daiquiri. This is one of my favorites. I think the daiquiri might be the perfect cocktail.
And you're not talking about the frozen, slushy,
that's right,
child's daiquiri.
Yes,
you're talking about a grown-up daiquiri.
A grown daiquiri. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we're going to be doing here. And the Hemingway daiquiri is just a little bit of a twist on one of my favorite drinks. So
yes, we're going with that daiquiri. All right, this is what Ross was alluding to. First Bank Stadium, the most generically titled stadium in college football. 11 a.m. kickoff, Ross.
Second Bank, though, not as good.
No, not as good.
Third Bank, not nearly.
It's First Bank.
This is First Bank.
Best Bank. Yes, no question. And Ross, 11 a.m. Get the Bloody
Yeah.
Marys going. I love them. We're making Bloody Marys.
that's
on
a
this
great
show
idea.
At some point, that is what Ross was talking about. Vanderbilt.
Favored in this one.
2.5
-2.5
points, meaning they think, I mean, generally it's 3 points you get for being at home. They think these two teams are pretty even.
Right.
Look, I like LSU plus the points because I think LSU overall is more talented.
100%.
But Vanderbilt's been a good team. And how about this? We got a little appetizer, little moosh-boosh of it. What looks like an angry Dennis Allen.
That is an angry Dennis Allen.
That is
right
angry
there.
Dennis Allen.
That is definitely post-week 9, 2024 Dennis Allen.
Yeah,
right there.
he's
He
in
is
his
not
Bears
happy.
t-shirt, and that it is what's coming up tonight. What do you think it means for the Saints, some of the Saints, to be facing Dennis Allen?
I think Kendre Miller is going to be fired up.
Oh, Kendre Miller's going to really be fired up.
I think Kellen Moore might feel like he's got something to prove.
A little bit.
Twice over, right? Not only is he going up against directly Dennis Allen, former New Orleans Saints head coach's defense, but he's also going to be opposite Ben Johnson, who was the belle of the ball.
Belle of the ball.
Belle of the ball when it came to the head coaching search. So I think Kellen Moore is going to have a little bit of an edge, maybe.
I didn't think about the Ben Johnson, Kellen Moore thing.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
Because they were the two, young offensive coordinators. Who's going to get a job first? Ben Johnson became the guy, and then Kellen Moore wins the Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah, that I like too.
Yeah.
That's good.
And then I think you got other players. I think defensive players. Cam Jordan. Hey, you stuck me with Todd Grantham for a year, and had me being a 5-tech run stopper. Let me show you what I can do as a stand-up
and didn't
pass
play me a
rusher.
lot. Yeah.
Right. Carl Granderson.
Carl Granderson seems to be motivated.
Yeah. He had to change his entire body type to play in Dennis Allen's defense to be something that he wasn't necessarily.
Something he wasn't.
Right. And now all of a sudden he's being utilized. Should have 5.5 sacks through the first 6 games, but that awful roughing the passer penalty that I think
that's
we all
without
still
Chase
wake
Young
up.
on the other side for most of that time.
So there's all that, and I think other guys like Alontae Taylor, who had gotten moved around a bunch and kind of got you're
jerked
gonna play
around
here,
a little bit.
you're gonna play here, play there, all that. I think there's a lot of players here that want to show, hey, we can do something without being in Dennis Allen's system.
That's so good. So much to dive into just with Dennis Allen. But you know what I want to do now? It's time to talk LSU. Let's bring in the guests.
And continuing on with the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, we have expanded our panel. Ross Jackson, Doug Mouton, joined by Ricardo LeCompte from here at WWL TV. And on the big screen is our guy, Matt Moscona, host of Locked on LSU, and probably the biggest and best voice in all of, really, Louisiana sports, but Baton Rouge sports.
Well, when you say the biggest, you mean physically the biggest.
Physically the biggest. Look how large.
Imposing.
Look how large
yes.
this man is.
Well, it's
My
the screen.
goodness.
I think part of it's a screen.
Is that a screen?
No, his head's
I'm
not
big.
big.
I didn't realize.
This is to scale. This is an actual to scale model.
He's a giant.
Massive. And we're going to dive into some LSU
Yeah,
talk.
go ahead.
Let's
You
do it.
start us off.
So, Matt, let's start off with this, man. Like, the biggest thing that we all want to know when it comes to LSU is there a realistic path to this team getting into the playoffs and potentially making a run at a national championship? This is a team that started off undefeated, had a tough loss. How does that impact their future and their trajectory into getting to the playoffs?
Yeah, as negative as people were after the loss to Ole Miss, which I do understand, I think you also got to realize so much of that is rooted in expectation. And this is a team right now that is 5-1 at the halfway point of the season. I actually had them losing to Clemson, so I had them at 5-1, just not how they arrived at 5-1. And they're ranked 10th in the country, guys. So, like, if the playoff happened today, they'd be in. Now, they're a flawed team, but I think one of the things we've seen around college football is that everybody's flawed. This past weekend, 7 ranked teams lost. There is no dominant team. So here's the path, right? You beat Vanderbilt this weekend, which is very doable, and then you come home to play Texas A&M, and A&M looks very good right now, but I'm going to tell you this much. You get an undefeated top 5 Texas A&M coming into Baton Rouge against a 6-1 top 10 LSU. That is going to be full throat, peak Tiger Stadium. And that's going to be hell for visitors. So that's a very winnable game. If you get that, you go into November where you got 2 home games against Arkansas and Western Kentucky, which you should handle business there, which means if you split road games against Bama and Oklahoma, which Oklahoma looked extremely fallible this past weekend, or lost to Texas, then you're 10-2 and you're in the playoff.
You're in.
So I'm not saying necessarily I'm predicting that to happen.
Yeah.
But is it a realistic path? Sure, that's a realistic path.
Yeah. you have to beat either A&M or Alabama. You can't have 3 losses. Look, I've said this a bunch of times. You can't have 3 losses and get into the playoffs. We've only done a 12-team playoff one time. So there's not a whole lot of track record. It's never happened once. We did it. And Alabama was actually 11 in the final college football playoff poll, but got jumped because of the way the setup is. They didn't get in as the 11th team. So it's certainly possible with 3 losses, but 2 losses seems to be the more reasonable path. Ricardo, you were there. Give me one thing about this LSU team that you felt better about after being at the game against South Carolina this past Saturday.
They have a defense that has the potential to lead them to a national championship, and that was the big bugaboo they've had the last few seasons. It was like, all right, offensively, do they, they have the pieces, but defensively they were horrific. And now they've got, they went out into the portal. They, boosted up their secondary. They've got some really good studs back there in that back end. And you saw it on display against South Carolina as well. That improving that defense is what's keeping them in these lighter games. While the offense is trying to find its way, while it's trying to find its running game, while they're trying to get Garrett Nussmeier to finally settle in and get over these injuries, the defense has been the constant for this team. And that defense against the SEC that isn't dominant, as Matt said earlier. This SEC, there are good teams. There's not a great team. So you don't have like a juggernaut Alabama that, you're going to be like, wow, this defense needs to step. They have a defense that's good enough to beat all the teams in the SEC and keep them in games. It's just a matter, can your offense, get it going and get it rolling out. But watching that defense up close, what they did to Lenore Sellers and how they were able to affect him, and a guy who is elusive and slippery, and they still ended up, sacking him 5 times. Had no passing game for South Carolina. That defense is good enough to get LSU into the playoffs.
Got a lot of guys there that are going to be playing on Sundays.
A lot,
a lot of guys are going to be playing on Sundays. Was there a more defensive football moment than I think it was Whit Weeks just retching and then playing a snap?
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks
in a row.
Like,
just
my goodness.
And the story, they were saying on the broadcast is because he has coffee. He's just chugging a bunch of, this is why I don't drink coffee, guys. This is why I'm not a coffee drinker. But he's just chugging coffee, and then he's like, hold on, let me chuck this up. All right, we're good to go.
I gotta say, I've been drinking coffee. I've been drinking coffee since I was about 8 years old.
Maybe that may improve, if you really needed to get into an ultimate sport, New Orleans sports show, you just go, I'm chugging 7 cups of coffee. All right, Doug, let's go.
Let's get it.
Look, Matt, there was a lot made about the money LSU spent in the portal, and so much about the NIL money and where it gets spent is fascinating to me. But LSU went out and maybe made 2 of the greatest portal purchases, getting Mansour Delane and A.J. Halsey. To me, those guys have been All-Americans all year. If you're going to spend that kind of money, it sure is nice to get that kind of dividend for your money, isn't it?
Right.
They hit on this entire portal class. Now, Delane and Halsey have been awesome. By the way, Halsey was a spring portal ad, and nobody knew that kid's name. He didn't show up until June. So we didn't even see him in purple and gold until the first day of fall camp in the beginning of August. But think about your 2 best offensive linemen have been Braylon Moore and Josh Thompson. Barian Brown has been dynamic in the return game and at receiver. Grant Chadwick, your punter, who continues to boom.
Special teams
He's averaging more than 50 a punt. They hit at every. Bernard Gooden's has had more snaps at defensive tackle than any other defensive tackle. Pyburn, Peyton, Butler at defensive end. It's a complete contrast from a season ago where they shopped in the bargain bin in the portal and they missed a ton. And this year they said, you know what? We're going to Saks Fifth Avenue. That's what we're going to do. And we're just going to swipe the credit card and we're just going to get great quality. And we know it's going to be expensive, but it's going to make us better, and it has.
Let's go get the best corner, and they did. Let's do this. If you don't mind, let's do our...
a boil water advisory?
Boil water advisory.
Let's do a boil water advisory.
Yes. Okay.
And the boil water advisory has affected your brain.
That's why. Too many boil water advisories. Matt, obviously this is the thing that derails this team, and I think I know what you're going to say. Let's give Ricardo the first shot at it, because I think I know where Matt's going. What's the boil water advisory on the LSU team?
Yeah, it is. It's this offense. It's the consistency
whole
on
thing.
offense. Yeah, it's just being consistent, like putting consistent performances together, and that's what this offense has yet to do. I mean, it was great that they were able to run for 166 against South Carolina and get the run game going, but we've got to see that consistently especially over the next 3 games where they'll be facing Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Alabama. Like they've got to get that run game going to help Garrett Nussmeier, and they've got to hit more explosives. They've got to be able to use these wide receivers, right?
Yeah.
I love that Trey'Dez Green got into the mix.
Yeah.
That was a big target that you could that not only you can go in the red zone, but like nobody in South Carolina could guard the guy. Like he was able to get whatever he wanted, and then with 8 catches, 119 yards, a touchdown. You know, he came in that game with just 2 catches all year.
Right. Yes.
You know, like because he's been dealing with injuries,
shocking.
hasn't been used much in the offense. But I just want to see this offense keep building. And this is the thing: the defense is there. Have that offense build and get to that point, then again, you have a team that can make some damage, get into the playoff because you've got both sides working. If the offense doesn't, build on this performance against South Carolina, that's going to be troublesome these next 3 games.
Matt, what about you? What's your boil water advisory thing you think can derail this team, if different than Ricardo's?
I mean, I'll go more specific. It's the offensive line. And it's the thing we've literally been talking about since the first day of spring football with this team. You replace 5 starting offensive linemen. The biggest question everyone has had since literally the first day is with 5 new starters, how quickly can they gel? And you're seeing a lot of those struggles. And Brian Kelly said when they played Ole Miss was on 86% of their defensive snaps, they were in drop 8, meaning Ole Miss was rushing 3 and dropping 8 on 86% of their defensive snaps. I don't care if it's Joe Montana against the Little Giants. Like, when every single one of your receivers is double covered, it's hard to find open receivers.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to run the ball if you're only going to face a 3-man front. Well, a big part of that is blocking the 3-man front and committing to running the football. I was very encouraged against South Carolina because they committed to running the football. 33 passes, 30 rushes. It's not a coincidence that they were able to average nearly 6 yards a carry when you commit to doing it. Eventually, you're going to break through. It's like body blows in a boxing match, guys. Like, you're not expecting to knock your opponent out when you hit him in the midsection, but you're expecting to weaken them because they don't like it. And then you know what happens? They start to drop that guard to protect their midsection, and then you clip them on the chin and you knock them out. Like, that's how a running game is supposed to work. It finally looked like that against South Carolina. Now stop fumbling at the 1 friggin' yard line and blow a team out.
The red zone issues were such a thing. Like,
it's a Louisiana problem.
It really is. Well, I kept making the joke,
problem.
and when I was watching the game, I went, they just turned into the Saints in the red zone. They literally did. And I said that Thursday night went too late did as well.
Yeah, right. No, it's a Louisiana football
Louisiana
problem.
epidemic right now. Yeah.
My boil water advisory, but to me it's also the positive, is that, look, I think Matt's right. Like, the offensive line isn't suddenly going to get great.
Yeah.
I think it's all about Garrett Nussmeier, and that's bad and good. I think if Nussmeier can show, in theory, more improved health and can be better, he's the guy who can elevate you above offensive line that might not be great.
Yeah.
In theory, at his best. And I think Garrett Nussmeier could be the guy. If you're going to beat Texas A&M or Alabama or both, Garrett Nussmeier, to me, is going to have to do some big things.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to elevate beyond where we've seen him yet this year. I certainly think he has it in him, but I think, to me, because I think the defense is going to be terrific, period. I think but you're not going to win if you don't score points.
Yeah.
To me, it's about how well Nussmeier can elevate an offensive line that's mediocre. And again, I think he can. Will he? We'll see. I do want to talk a little bit about what this year has meant in the NIL. And we were talking about this before we started. Texas Tech supposedly spent the second most money in the NIL. They spent $28 million. They had never finished a year in the AP top 10. Right now they're number 7 and unbeaten. They have seemingly bought their way in, which Matt pointed out SMU did last year.
Right.
It's interesting how that's happened. And then on the other side of that, Michigan spent all that money on Bryce Underwood. Right now they are not ranked and not considered up. Will people be willing to spend that kind of money on high school players going, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or is what happened to Michigan with Bryce Underwood going to kill some of the market on spending for high school players? I find all that fascinating. Matt, what are some of your random thoughts about what we've learned in the NIL this year?
Well, if the second richest guy in the world, who I think now actually is the richest guy in the world, wants to buy you a quarterback because his girlfriend asked for it, I don't really think it matters what your pocketbooks look like, and I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Larry Ellison from Oracle, of course, who's the one who bought Bryce Underwood.
Right.
The Bryce Underwood thing is going to be interesting because that's obviously a 3-year play for Michigan.
Right, yes.
He may end up being outstanding, and we'll see. But the benefit of that for LSU, of course, is the fact that they freed up all the money they had allocated for Bryce Underwood, which allowed them to then go spend on this portal class, which built up the entire roster.
It wound up being a better choice.
Yeah.
Yes, and well, it was a weird irony. The worst thing that could have happened in losing Bryce Underwood ended up being the best thing because it got a lot of really rich people really pissed off, and so they were like, give me my.
That's a great point.
It did. That is so good.
And so it stimulated LSU's NIL fund. They had money to spend all of a sudden. So it worked. Now they got to deliver on the field this season.
Yeah.
But I do think it's an interesting question, Doug, about what it means for high school recruiting in the future. You're already seeing high school classes shrink. For example, LSU this year is only expected to sign maybe 20 high school prospects. And whereas before the hard cap was 25, and sometimes you would oversign. So you're already seeing that manifest. And, it's important to note, like, on average in this era, this portal era, a quarter of your high school signees turn over every year. So if you sign a class, after their freshman year, a quarter leave, and then the next year, another quarter leave. So after 2 years, half of your high school class is gone. So you never even get to watch it materialize into juniors and seniors and upperclassmen for the majority of them. An example is like Lance Hurd. Lance Hurd was a 5-star offensive tackle from Neville. LSU put a ton of resources into recruiting him. They get him as a freshman. He doesn't play. He's behind Will Campbell. Boom. He transfers to Tennessee. Like, what if Lance Hurd were a redshirt sophomore on this team playing left tackle for you right now? Your offensive line probably looks a lot better, a lot different.
Yeah.
So I do think you're seeing a lot of reallocated resources away from high school recruiting into the portal.
Yeah,
That's
super.
fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
stuff.
It is.
All right, last minute.
Yeah.
Do we all believe LSU gets the win this week against Vanderbilt? Look, I think LSU is better. I talk about whatever you want with the quarterbacks, guys 2 through 40. I like LSU better than Vanderbilt. I like LSU to win.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I'm taking LSU in this one. And I think getting not just the run game going, but getting and keeping the running backs out of the backfield involved. Kate Durham, fantastic catch down that sideline at one point. Keeping them involved in a litany of different ways just helps to open up that offense a little bit more. And then, of course, a fantastic defense.
Yeah.
Finish in the red zone. That's what LSU's got to do.
Right.
Finish those things. I think Vanderbilt is better than I think the credit
No,
you're
I
giving.
know.
Because you're saying
I know.
2 to 40.
I know.
And Diego Pavia, if they cannot contain him, he can do a lot of damage. Remember, this game last year was close as
Moxie.
well. Like Diego is a lot better, and he's got another year under. Like I think it's a lot closer. I think LSU fans are going to be sweating this one out. But I think they end up winning. I think LSU ends up winning.
Yeah, I'm not saying LSU wins by 4 touchdowns.
But I don't think Vandy
I'll
is
say
bad.
LSU wins by 4 touchdowns. Matt, what do you think?
LSU's defense last year stunk, and they put Vanderbilt in a chokehold. And the reason is this Vanderbilt team is very good at running the football. You have to be gap sound, but they really struggle because they don't have playmakers on the outside. And LSU secondary, as we talked about a bit ago, is awesome. So, look, if you can contain Diego Pavia and not let him kill you running the football, it's going to be hard for Vanderbilt to score. Flip side of it is Vanderbilt's very good in their run defense, but they do not have athletes on the back end. And LSU's receivers, y'all mentioned Treydas Green. Yes, throw it 11 times to the 6'7", 240 guy.
Seriously.
Rocket science.
Seriously.
Rocket science.
Throw him the
He's
ball.
big.
Yes. So I think as long as LSU's offensive line can keep Garrett Nussmeier upright, there are going to be big plays to be made in the passing game. I do think LSU wins. I agree with Ricardo. I think it's a close game in Nashville, but I do like the Tigers to win.
Nice. Matt Moscona, thank you. Ricardo, you know what time it is?
I do. Props to you.
Last call!
And welcome back to the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. We are drinking our last call, favorite part of the show, and we are leaning back into our favorite Ernest Hemingway.
That's right.
For what is called
The Hemingway Daiquiri. Listen, I think the daiquiri, the 3-ingredient rum daiquiri,
Yes.
not the
Yes.
frozen daiquiri, is probably one of the perfect
It's
balanced
an amazing
cocktails.
drink. It is.
And this is just a little bit of a variation. We have a grapefruit, we have a lime, because those are the two fruits that you're gonna kind of see here. And so it's effectively your usual daiquiri, which are these first three ingredients here of rum. We're gonna use Diplomatico. White rum is what you want for this. And then we have lime juice as well as simple syrup. You could do a Demerara simple syrup if you want to. For this, I just went with a straight simple syrup because of all the other sweetness that we have going on. But these are the two additions when it comes to the Hemingway. A little bit of grapefruit, a little bit of grapefruit juice. This is beautiful.
Oh, is that,
Look
we
at that
squeeze
color.
that out. It looks
My
great.
goodness.
Oh, this is fresh.
Yeah, that's your favorite right there.
Oh, I
And
love
then
fresh. Love
some
fresh.
Luxardo maraschino liqueur to go in. So this is what makes it the Hemingway. This is what makes it the daiquiri.
That adds a little tart and a little bit of sweet. It's good
bit of
stuff.
tart, little bit of
Ross is
sweet,
going to be
little bit
mixing
tart.
that up. Of course, the other part of the last call is a little bit of a think. Ricardo, what you got for last call?
Well, here's my thing. First of all, I started just looking up a bunch of Hemingway facts just because we were doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Hemingway
yeah.
fact. Did you know that in Key West, every year at one of the bars, they have a Ernest Hemingway look-alike contest,
Oh,
and they
I
will
love
crown the
that.
next Papa because
Old
Papa
Man
was
of the
his
Sea
nickname.
kind of thing?
Yeah, Old Man of the
Yeah.
Sea. So yeah, they have a contest to see who could be the best Ernest Hemingway
dig
look-alike.
that.
Are you thinking of injuring?
I look nothing like him. Yes.
Good. White beard, you're in.
I really good.
Little Santa Claus thing going on.
Right. As for my last call and that thinking to drink, LSU's got a tough 3-game stretch coming up with Vanderbilt, with Texas A&M, and with Alabama on the road to the playoff. Let's talk about another team who could possibly get to the playoffs, Tulane. And Tulane's got another early start just like LSU. They've got Army at Yeoman Stadium at 11 o'clock. And this Army team obviously was the one that won the American last year, knocked off Tulane in that championship
Beat
game.
'em badly.
Yes, beat them badly. As head coach John Summerall said, they beat the stew out of them.
Yeah,
I've
stew.
never
Yeah.
heard of
Yeah, I didn't have
the
stew in me, but
right,
yes.
but it was cold.
certainly
It
don't
was
now.
cold in New York that night, and they beat the stew out of Tulane.
I mean, what's your stew
Yeah,
then?
so there are guys there and coaches that still remember that loss to Army, so it's a big one for them. Now, Tulane's got 60 new players, and they weren't there last year, so they know that there's no revenge on that side for those players. But they know how important this game is in terms of getting back there and staying on course for the college football playoff, because pretty much they'll have to win out, beat Memphis later in the year, possibly beat South Florida in the championship game to get to the playoff, just like where LSU wants to end up.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, you're right.
Ricardo. Ross is
new
mixing
Ricardo.
4 because we're mixing one from that he can't
Yeah,
drink.
this is in honor of Matt.
Which I think is
Since he
awesome.
can't-
All right,
since
look,
he
my
can't be
last
there
call
for
is
it.
simple, and I mentioned Garrett Nussmeier before. To me, this is now on Nussmeier. The offensive line isn't getting better. You're not getting a new set of receivers who have been good. You do have your big tight end now. You've got the connection going. This is on Nussmeier. If he wants to be a first-round draft pick, it is now all right in front of him.
Yeah.
We think he's healthier. Is he 100%? We'd love to think so, but we're not sure at this point. We're going to see it in the next 3 weeks. You got Vanderbilt, A&M, Alabama. This is on Garrett Nussmeier right now. Go win us some games.
And I will say, in that South Carolina game, he actually was ripping the ball. And
He
looked,
did.
And he
Threw it
looked
harder.
healthier because of
And
that off
Brian
week.
Kelly
yes.
said Monday he had better RPMs than he
Right.
has at any point
Right.
this year.
Yeah. Before we drink, I'll do mine very quickly.
Oh, yeah,
Mine's
yeah.
very quick.
Okay.
The LSU Tigers are going to win by 4 touchdowns up against Vanderbilt. Mine was easy. I literally came in with that supposed to be my last call, and then you made a reference to 4 touchdowns. And I was like, oh gosh, that's exactly what I was going to say. So I'm
Because I said they're not going to beat him by 4
on it.
touchdowns, but he believes they're going to
Yeah,
beat him by
because
4
I think that I think the defense for LSU is going to be the big difference. They're going to put a chokehold on this Vanderbilt offense and let Pavia run around all day. Let the defense hit him, and then see what he has left to do. Like, I'm not worried.
Hey, they did it against Lenore Sellers. They can
Right.
probably do it against
Right.
Diego Pavia.
All right, toast to whom? Who we toast?
Should we toast to Garrett Nussmeier?
No. That must go. That's who we toasted to. Hold on. I got to tap this. I got to tap this
Get
one
him in
back.
there,
There
too.
you go.
Cheers, buddy.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, that's delish. It's a tiny bit of grapefruit juice, and I taste it.
Yep.
The fresh squeezed juice.
I knew this was going to be right up your
Oh,
alley.
the grapefruit and the
This is
lime.
right up
Oh,
your alley.
man.
That's very citric forward.
As the kids say, that slaps.
Oh, I like that.
But it's food or drink, so it smacks.
Ah.
It only slaps if it's music.
Wow.
Hey.
Bang. Bay Area, baby. I've never been.
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. We will see you next time. Thanks for being here.